I'd like to call the meeting to order, and our first and only agenda item is taking the Quality and Productivity Commission's reports on their work plan for this year through 2011. And so if we could have our illustrious president of the organization come along and give us a report.
Thank you, Chairman Koretz. I was afraid I might not get on today because of your crowded calendar, but I'm glad you had room for me. I was with your Chief of Staff this morning at the Boys and Girls Club, and you'll be glad to know he said good things about you.
And that's what he plays a lot, isn't
it? Good afternoon, council members. Thank you for the opportunity to meet with you today. I want to spend just a minute or two on the Commission's background and to talk about where we are and where we've been the last year or so. As you no doubt know, the Commission was established by vote of the City Council 25 years ago. During the last 15 years or so, much of the focus of the Commission has been on aggregating and researching and evaluating and honoring various departments' best practices. And we've given out our Quality and Productivity Awards to literally hundreds of people and departments who deserve recognition. My friend, the journalist, who some of you may know, David Horowitz, calls them the Academy Awards for city employees, and I think that's as good a definition of anything. And the idea behind it, of course, is not just to give out awards, but to stimulate by recognizing good work. And the stimulation and recognition of that kind of work is more important in our current fiscal situation than ever before. Our current status is as follows. We're almost at full strength, 15 members. We have 14 on the Commission, and we will soon have a 15th, I'm sure. You should have in the packets that we provided you our current plan of work, and what I'd like to do is cover 4 items together. One is to review that plan of work. Second is to talk about 2 new concepts that we'd like to chat with you about. And finally, and maybe most importantly, have some open discussion about how we can work most efficiently and effectively together to reach our shared goals. So let me start, if I may, with the plan of work 2009-2011, which I believe you have. As I believe most of you know, the Commission had 4 employees up until 4 years ago now, and it has 1 employee. So we have been attempting to do more with less for the last several years, and this is a very ambitious plan of work given the staff we have and the fact that the Commission is made up of volunteers, but we are, as the English would say, beavering on with it. The cornerstone of our plan of work will continue to be our Quality and Productivity Awards. The second arena of the 4 is improving customer service. We're looking into customer comment cards under which customer service provided by city employees is recognized by allowing people at public counters and other places to fill out public comment cards, pointing out superior assistance on the part of city employees. On the second page, the top item is identifying best practices, and there are 3 bullet points there, all 3 of which we are moving forward on, looking at cost savings and enhanced productivity and improve city services, both from among employees and outside groups, which have brought forward a number of suggestions. And I'm going to come back to that thought momentarily. One of the things that we want to do is reporting out to the city ways in which we can leverage existing best practices. And what we have done is we have taken the Quality and Productivity Award winners for the last 5 years? For the last 5 years, looked at them and said to ourselves, what can be applied here to other departments and other aspects of the city? The little bit of a bottleneck we've run into is getting much further than where we are requires more staff time to do that analysis and evaluation than we have available to us. But it's the kind of project and program that I think both in the short term and the long term would pay off for the city if we could get past that bottleneck. That was not a plea for more people. That was an explanation of status quo. We have also started to communicate with other commissions and similar entities across the country and in relevant municipalities. We have a meeting scheduled with the Los Angeles County Quality and Productivity Commission. Share ideas, see what they're doing, what are they doing that we can adapt, and vice versa. Improving communications internally and externally, because I happen to be in the marketing and communications business. This happens to be my favorite of all of the things we're working on. One of the things we want to do is go out into the community and share with the community, and when I say the community, I mean through its organizations, neighborhood councils, chambers of commerce, homeowners groups, business groups, and talk to them about not what the commission is doing, but based on our quality and productivity awards, what the city and its employees are doing. All you hear about in the media is the negativism. All you hear about is what doesn't happen, what elected official is driving a Maserati this week, et cetera, et cetera. So our goal is to go out to the, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to tell on you.
Oh, no.
Sorry. I take it back.
What's the hybrid?
A hybrid Maserati. So we want to go out and begin to spread the word out in the community, what's happening good in the city. And one of the tactics for doing that is upgrading our website and then, of course, doing our best to drive people to that website. So that is our plan of work for the 2-year period. We're just in the first half of it now. Before I continue, I want to know if you have any questions, comments, input, or guidance that relates to this document.
Well, the first question is, how do we make it a little less broad and more direct? I want to see this really accomplishing something meaty, and that's sort of what I'm hoping this committee will start doing too, identifying real solutions to problems, how things can be done more efficiently and in a less expensive way, and then following up those ideas either directly with departments or turning them into council motions to direct departments to do the right thing. How do you fit in a more specific way in terms of identifying best practices so that we can really do something concrete with this?
Let me, I said there were 4 areas I want to talk about. That jumps to one of them, which is good. My personal opinion is that the city doesn't lack for good ideas. We have lots of good ideas. VICA came up with 50 ideas. I sat on a business retention and attraction task force that Councilmember Parks chaired. The union came up with 30, SEIU came up with 32 ideas. There are hundreds of good ideas, additional ones floating around this building. What we believe is lacking is an organized, coordinated, and cohesive approach to identifying, researching, making decisions, and moving forward on all those ideas that already exist. It's easy to come up with lots more. So one of the things we were going to propose to you today is that we begin to look at some of those things on a preliminary basis, because within A, the purview and scope, and B, the resources we have available, and then maybe on a quarterly basis come back to you and say, here are 3 or 5 or 10 very specific ideas that we believe are worthy of being looked into by the city. We don't have the power to go to various departments and say, here's a really cool idea, why don't you, building and safety or whatever, look into them. You do, and the council does. So I'm throwing out the suggestion, just to answer you very specifically, that we come to you with some ideas that we believe are worthy of researching and analyzing, and having AGE determine, yes, some of these are worthwhile, and maybe take it to council if a motion is required, or just going directly to departments and asking those departments to analyze those. Does that resonate?
It does. In fact, it's interesting because I had a conversation with my staff today, and we in essence came up with the same idea. There are a lot of ideas floating around there. There are a lot that Laura Chick came up with that were ignored to some extent by the council. The VICA, the SEIU list, they're groups that have lists of ideas, some of which are better than others. If you were able to take a look at it from a policy perspective and recommend a certain number of those to us, that would be something that we could follow through as a committee. So you could have focus on the ideas and in some way assembling them and giving us your thoughts and priorities, and we have the clout to actually try and follow through and make it happen.
Exactly.
And certainly now is the time to be doing that if there ever was, because we have an ongoing structural shortfall, which is huge during bad budget times, but I think will be existent even during better budget times. And we have to clearly find some ways to save money, and we can't sit on these ideas anymore. We really have to make them happen.
I think one of the issues also is people don't get responded to. They bring the city, in an amorphous sense, they bring the city an idea, then they don't hear back. And whether an idea is accepted or rejected or under analysis, they don't hear back. And I'll use this Business Retention and Attraction Task Force that I was a member of. Those of us on the task force met a number of times, came up with a list of ideas, probably some brilliant, probably some ludicrous, but no one ever got back to the members of the task force and said, here's what happened to your ideas. And I think when a city wants, and appropriately so, citizen participation, the least it owes its citizens is thank you for your idea, and here's what happened to your idea. Now, is that the purview of this committee? That's for you to tell me, but I think it should be the way we do business around here.
I think it is, and to the extent that we can identify good sources of great ideas that probably no one ever got back and said, hey, we did this or that, because most likely most of those never really got serious consideration. To the extent that we can find those ideas and incorporate them with this committee and actually follow through on them, I think that's, in my view, that's our best mission. There are a lot of good ideas that have been given to the city over the years that could increase productivity and save us a lot of money, and most of those I think have gotten lost in the shuffle somewhere. And if we can somehow herd them to this committee and your commission is able to assist us in going through those and turning them into something, in my view, that's a lot of what our mission here is.
And
any other thoughts?
Just one answer. I took some of those recommendations and introduced them as motions in a package we introduced last year. It's in the Business Jobs Committee right now.
Right.
So some of those are in there. But the problem we have around here is we get too often these blue ribbon panels or special committees. They write a report and they end up on a shelf because no one takes them and codifies them in the way of motions and puts them forward. And I think
exactly.
we need to do that. We need to find a way to do that.
And to me, the closing of the loop is the one-page note that goes back to the members of that volunteer group and says, we're working on it, or they were really bad ideas, guys, but thanks for driving down to City Hall, or whatever you say. And instead of you serve on a task force or a BTAC or whatever, and there's no feedback. And it doesn't matter what the feedback is. I mean, there should be a thank you, and we're still working on it, or we're working on this, or we don't like this, but just thanks. And I think that's one of the things you do to engender more citizen participation. You just communicate with the people who have volunteered their time. I say that as a suggestion, not as a criticism, because it's one of those things that's easier said than done, and I'm the first to admit that. But it's something we should be striving for.
I think that right on cue, that the issues that Greg said in the committee, we're trying to locate them now from the last meeting we had with jobs, and we'll be in that committee at 3. So we're still trying to locate what the status of those recommendations were that came out of that task force. Let me just go through a couple of things that from your comments. One of the things, and having had some role with this almost since I came on the council, the one thing that and I realized the CAO at one time was the administrative arm, and then we cut and things of that nature. What support are you getting with the CAO currently? Is that like a half a body or a third of the body, or?
Let me take just a minute for a quick background and then answer you directly, Councilman. Originally, Councilman Zine had introduced a motion asking for the commission to have a minimum of one person on its behalf in the CAO's office. That motion was seconded and eventually filed. I had a meeting with Ray Serrana at the time, the CAO, and what we agreed was that the CAO's office would provide the equivalent of one full-time person. That works out to about half or three-quarters of the time of one person with some particular additional assistance in the area mostly leading up to our quality and awards session. So we really have, in essence, a quick answer, the equivalent of one person.
So, and you only see them in concentration around the award time. So are they staffing your meetings?
Yes, yes. We have about, Mr. Munhall, one half or two-thirds of his time on an ongoing permanent basis. They do staff our meeting, they prepare the minutes and the agenda for us, and they are as helpful as they can given the constraints of their other responsibilities.
You know, one thing, and this is just a matter of going through several of your notes, and I realize that the Productivity Committee envisions highlighting performance from employees of the city, but I went through the whole, almost the entire document before I found a mention of the receivers of the service, which is the community, and it was basically, wasn't until you got to the website. And it would appear that we would also be looking at them as being the source, because they're getting the service. They're the ones that wonder, as we get these calls, why do you send a truck out for a couch and leave a chair on a big item pickup or whatever, and then come back a week later and the chair's destroyed? I mean, they see what they think are inefficiencies, and they see what they think are issues that need to be corrected. Now, whether they're right 50% of the time or whatever, you know, it's up for grabs. But that seems to be an invaluable source. The other thing you mentioned as a point of contact is neighborhood councils. Whether there's been any discussion with them as to their creating some form of a conduit with you as far as productivity, where they as a council are looking for a place to put their ideas, in the sense of saying if they had a standing subcommittee within each of the 89 neighborhood councils or whatever, or those that want to play, that you'd get an invaluable resource. Plus, I think you have then an inbred group of people that have an interest when you have the award, just not city employees applauding each other. You have people who have had a role in this process and have an appreciation for the services, are also committed to be a part of it. So those are a couple of things in looking at how we can get the community involved and how we can get them to produce ideas on an ongoing basis. How can they then adopt the commission to be a part of it and become the audience when you're making these commitments and showing what kind of work is being done?
I think you get, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I got tons of stuff.
Thank you. Then I'm best off doing one at a time. I think all of that input would fall into one of three categories. Praise for city employees or city services, criticisms of city services, or ideas and suggestions. There's a dearth of the first. Mm-hmm. No one spends a lot of time picking up the phone or sending an email saying, gee, I love my city and the people and the work they're doing. That's one of the goals of the customer comment cards that I mentioned briefly. I don't think any of us lack for hearing input from people about what they're unhappy about. And we talk.
Let me just stop you there. The dilemma is I think if we label it of what you're unhappy about, they'll give us more than our share. If you ask them, do they have some ideas on how the city can provide better service to you, then I think you've twisted it to where you're now asking them to give you ideas without identifying, I didn't like the way Joe showed up and, fixed the tree or whatever. But I think if you twist the question a little bit, you might get a different answer. Sorry to interrupt you, but
No, I think that's a good point. We have talked about that point, and I think what we're looking at is utilizing the commission website for exactly that purpose. Now, we haven't completed, although we're 80% completed with the technical aspects of the website. We want to get through the beta testing of it, and one of the things that we want to begin to do is to let the public know that that's one of the ways they can efficiently communicate with their city. Use our website to share with us ideas that we can then look at, and to wrap it into what I said earlier on, those that we think preliminarily are really worthy of further consideration, we would bring to you.
And then I got a couple other ideas. That one of the things, there's a couple of units in the city. I'm just wondering whether you have a relationship with them. The mayor has a unit in his office called the Productivity such and such committee.
Right.
Have you been in touch with them to see if they're doing something that would be relevant to the
We have
committee?
not, but we need to.
Okay. The other one, and it's the other side of the equation, we have a unit in the controller's office that deals with waste and fraud. Without getting into the nitty-gritty of who's doing what in their investigation, that would be a source of corrective behavior or things that may have fallen apart. That could be a source of where there can be attention to dealing with issues.
We're batting 500, Councilman, because I have met with the city controller on 2 occasions to discuss that exact point. And we've not only initiated the discussion, we've begun to identify some areas where we can work together.
And then my final thing is that we just approved something in the council, and I had trouble remembering it this morning, but it's a new Office of Strategic Partnerships in the mayor's office, where they are going forward on being a resource in the city to partner with nonprofits, grant sources of funds to bring these kinds of activities to be partners with the city. And I look at that as maybe being a point of contact for funding to make the commission operational. Because, you know, what I hear back from people that are on the commission, they love the idea of being there. Without resources, it becomes a chore, because you can only have meetings so many times, and you say, okay, now, are we gonna get something rolling? Are we gonna get something done? And then every one of them are busy people, and they can't take these projects with them. So they end up kind of losing steam over time, saying, you know, when do we get these projects done? And so maybe this strategic partnership group, and the young lady that used to be up in the Sacramento, Miss Adams. Is it Adams? Aline? No, she used to be at Sacramento. In fact, I think she was on Ward and Power Commission for a while. She was
Eileen Adams?
Yeah.
Eileen Adams,
be.
yeah.
She's the person that's heading this operation in the mayor's office. And it's basically trying to develop partnerships in the community that are nonprofits, funding sources that bring expertise and things to the city. And it looks like a resource, I would hope, financial resources to help where the need is. And it looks like it would be something, and pulling it together, that would aid your operation to where you're not on such bare bones that if, you know, because I get a sense, a couple of meetings I went to, if the commissioners are sitting there saying, I don't have enough time to take these projects with me, and there's no staff to leave them with.
At the risk of the cliche, as I'm sure you know, you're preaching to the converted here.
Yeah. So
Of
that's
course, that's
a
true.
couple ideas.
But thank you for that suggestion, and we will look into it.
And another thought too, years ago, we used to have a financial reward for efficiencies that save quantifiable amount of money. I think I actually put a motion in last year to redo that. One thought may be, and it goes to Mr. Park's ideas as well, is if we could start a process, and maybe Mr. Parks will want to talk about this in our budget committee, but if you could identify, let's say, a $200,000 saving by some employee coming forward and saying, we're doing this wrong, we can do this cheaper and better, and we can quantify it at $200,000, that 10% of that would be retained by the commission for other work, and part of that could go as a financial reward to the employee as well, which would, I think you'd see a flood of people with great ideas coming forward. Right now, a lot of people have ideas. Many are frustrated by their departments. They don't want to say anything. Others just don't want to take the time and don't know who to talk to. But if there was a system of rewards like we used to have years ago, I think you'd find a floodgate open up of ideas that would come out, because there's a lot of smart people around this building, and that would really encourage them to do that. And then we could maybe fund the commission's activity through a retention of part of the savings.
There was a program, as you said, Councilman. I don't think there's anything of that nature now. In fact,
No.
we talked about it once or twice in a commission meeting, saying, wouldn't it be great to do that? Because one of the things you can then do is tie our annual awards to that, where people are forced, if you will, to clearly identify the source of something and to force them to quantify it.
Yeah.
Now that quantification is, well, we think we saved $50 million. You know, prove it, show us.
Exactly.
So if that's something you could put into effect, we would love to be your water bearers.
Let me find my old motion and see where it is. I don't even know where it went.
We used to have that in the police department, and it gets very, very sketchy when you start talking about how much money. You're far better off if you end up with a cap, like you give a deal and there's a $10,000 deal or $5,000. Because if you start getting into how much you save, you get people that, I mean, they think they saved the world, and the next thing you know, they think it's $100 million. You're going, we're not going to give you 10% of that. I mean, it's,
That's why you need a real staff that
yeah,
can sit and
sit down and
quantify.
But the key is we found that the percentage thing just drove you into the program dissipated. But if you have
Some very rich cops too, probably.
if you have a cap of some type, so people know there's standards. Like if you hit the big deal, it's a $20,000 deal, and if you hit the middle deal, it's something to where they know there's a reward. But when you get into the percentage, people just begin to think that it's the lotto.
The devil is always in the details, but you're right, nothing incentivizes people like a reward.
Yeah.
And there's no reward like $1 in their pocket.
No, I think it's a great idea, and with it, if you did it for both could have a cap. I mean, there could be a cap of $10,000 and a cap for the commission funding of $25,000 for a truly great idea.
And to a degree, it almost doesn't matter the amount. I mean, if you give someone $1,000 or $2,500, there's not a big difference. It's as much the idea and the recognition and the fact that they can brag in a positive way. You know, I got recognized by my city for coming up with this wonderful idea. But clearly, it becomes a law of unintended consequences if you just leave it open-ended.
Yeah. I mean, somebody told us recently, did your commission just give up your stipends?
Yes, we did. Yes.
One suggestion I'd make, rather than just give them up, is that you put them into operational of the commission. I mean,
Yes, I was almost impeached as president when I came to the commission and said, let's give up our stipend.
I think if you used it in the sense of your operating deal, you might get a lot more out of it than just saying, now that we're coming here with all these ideas and no staff, and now we don't want you to take your deal. You can actually create a use of the money through having it all go into your operation of the commission.
So, forgive me, I want to make sure I understand your suggestion clearly. You're suggesting that we take the stipend, but it not go into each individual person's pocket, but it be
Whatever
put
the
back
mechanics
into the
are.
commission's
Yeah.
coffers.
Yeah, whatever whether it's something that the controller can do directly, as opposed to giving it to him and then saying, cash, you don't want all of that menagerie, but if there's something to where you say the commission is gonna get X dollars per month, rather than give it to these 14 names, you put it in account such and such so the commission has access to it.
One of the things that the mayor did was ask that all of the commissioners he appoints, our commission or others, give up their stipend. Now, figure out how we make that one work.
I think you can give it up, it's just that you're asking for it as because you unlike everyone else, you don't have a major department that you can go to and say, get this work done. It's either on your shoulders or it doesn't get done. And a CAO staff of one can't get all the things you want done. So I think it's one of those issues, you have a unique set of circumstances. But again, I don't think you want to get into that give and take,
No,
take
no,
the
no,
check
you're
and
right.
bring it
Just
back.
Payroll deduction, as it were.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you can divert the funds to make it operational for a commission that has no staff, I think it has a completely different flavor to it.
You can be sure I wrote that down.
Okay.
How are you following up on your own best practices? I know there are other commissions like this, some that I know have had some very specific effectiveness, like the county commission. What have you done so far, and what are you going to do in terms of your own best practices?
I'm sorry. what we've done so far is, first of all, we've identified some of the municipalities and Los Angeles County that are relevant and appropriate. And we've begun to contact them and talk with them. And we've done 2 cities so far, Phoenix, and I have forgotten the other one, and just had conversation with them. Once again, the problem is the same. It takes staff time to take some of those best practices and figure out how do we apply them here? How do they become massaged and changed and relevant to the city of Los Angeles? We lack the resource to do that because the staff support we have at this point is pretty much utilized to its maximum in terms of the administrative aspects of our commission, some of the activities in this plan of work, and our quality and productivity awards. So we have gotten, just in those conversations with those 2 municipalities, some very interesting ideas. The question is, we get to that same bottleneck of how do we move into the researching and analysis of those ideas, which clearly is not within the capability of the volunteers on the commission.
Do you have you come up with any thoughts yet on how you're going to move forward with that?
No, to be candid with you. But I don't want this discussion to be a litany of, oh, poor us, we don't have enough people, because it's not that. I'm just trying to respond accurately. And it is a fact that it is possible that our appetite is too large for the plate that we have to eat off of. But at the same time, it's better to have that than to have people say, now, who is that commission and what do they do and why are they here? So we're as ambitious as I think we can and should be, and maybe even a bit more. And there are a lot of things that I wish we could do and that we've identified as excellent activities for us, such as the one you just mentioned, that we really don't have the capability to get into to the degree we'd like to.
Well, just from my own perspective, I would think identifying better practices and implementing them to make your commission more effective would be a top priority. Because I know there are other commissions that do this and have had some specific effectiveness that this commission probably has not yet. And so I would certainly encourage you to view that as a top priority. And any ways that this committee can help, we certainly would be happy to do so.
Thank you.
I know you have other parts of your report that you haven't given yet, so I'll let you continue.
No, there's just there's one document in here that is entitled A New Direction for QPC that I don't think I really want to discuss yet, but what I would ask you to do, and it's the document I gave you when we had breakfast about the communicating, that I'd like the AGE members to take a look at, and the next time we meet in a month or two, I'd like to get some feedback from you as a group, if you think this is worthy of our focus and time, or if you think we should put this on the back burner. So I don't think we need to discuss it today, but I would like to invite you to look at it. Other than that, I think we've covered the items that are on my agenda.
And how active are your committee members? I mean, do your members have the time to put in?
Very good question. And like most groups, you have some people who are quite involved, you have some people who are minimally involved, and you have some people who show up so rarely you're not sure who they are when they walk in the room. That's typical of volunteer groups. On the whole, it's much better in the last year. Prior to the last year, we even had a difficult time getting a quorum. We had, for some period of time, 12 commission members, but under the city's regulations, which I believe are different than Robert's Rules of Order, a quorum is not considered how many people are on a group, but what its allowable members are. In other words, if you have a commission of 15 members, your quorum is 8 people. But if you only have a commission where there are 12 members, your quorum is still 8 people. So that's why it's been so important to us to get up to a level of 15 members. Attendance has improved over the last year. We have divided ourselves into 3 subgroups to implement the plan of work. And each of those groups meets before our regular commission meeting to talk about their progress. Each one has its own committee chair. I'm one and the two vice presidents. I would say we are, given the constraints of any volunteer group, I think we are above average in terms of the time and the effort and the commitment that the people put in.
Let me ask you, is the attendance issue based on the appointment of different people aren't making their appointments, or are they appointing people who are not showing up?
Appointed people who are not showing up.
Okay, so there's a lack there, but you're not ending up with vacancies.
We have one vacancy at this time.
Any other questions? Well, I suggest that we meet sometime in the first quarter of next year, maybe near the end of January, and follow up on what progress we've made. Now, who is the one remaining appointee? Is it a mayoral appointee, or do you know?
It's yours.
It's mine. Well, we'll fill that one quickly.
You asked. I wasn't going to say.
Yeah, we're doing the paperwork to renew two of ours that are up, so Julie and Mr. Turner.
Right.
So we're doing the paperwork now.
So we'll get that quickly up to 15, get you at full strength, and
We appreciate it.
and get cracking.
Thank you all for your time and
Thank
for
you.
your input.
Thank you.
Very much.
I appreciate it. And if there's no other business,
Mr. Chair, so just for the record, you want to continue the item?
yes, we'll continue it to January, sometime in January. And with that, we are adjourned.
So David says maybe they shouldn't take the commission checks and give it